everybody, it's Tara. This is my wrap-up for the first campaign of the ReaD&Dathon. If you don't know what the ReaD&Dathon is, it's a readathon that Kaylee from the Enchanted Library and I hosted in the first 2 weeks of February. I will link my announcement video up there and down below so you can get all the details if you missed it. The basic gist of it is that you're creating a character and you read books for that character's race and class and alignment based on the prompts that Kaylee and I came up with for them. The first book I read was for the race prompt of Halfling, which was to read a book under 200 pages, and that book was Snapshot by Brandon Sanderson. In this world, fully immersive virtual reality snapshots can be created of a specific day to let police better investigate the crimes that happened on that day. And the story follows a cop who is on snapshot duty who stumbles across a mass murder and he decides to follow up on it even though the precinct told him not to. I loved the premise of this book, but I think a lot of potential was wasted on the fact that it was such a short story. It is a novella. It was 160 odd pages long, I think. It's just not enough time to really develop the world and the technology and the story and the characters. I think it would have been a lot better as a full-length novel, better yet, a movie. There were 2 twists towards the end that I did not see coming at all, and that's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but I think in a movie there would have been so many opportunities to leave little visual hints, and that visual medium would have made the impact of those twists a lot stronger in the end. Apparently it was optioned for a movie back in 2017, so maybe it'll happen eventually. If it does, I will definitely be going to see that movie. This was my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I was hoping that it would spur me on to finally take the dive into one of his hugely massive fantasy series. But sadly, there was nothing really exceptional about Snapshot, nothing exceptional about the writing style or the way he developed the plot or the characters, so even though I do want to try more Brandon Sanderson in the future, not high on my list of priorities right now. I rate Snapshot 3 stars overall. I think if it was a fully fleshed out novel, it could definitely have been 4 stars or maybe even 5 stars. Next up for my character's class, I went with Warlock, and that is to read a book featuring supernatural or paranormal, and for that I read The Diviners by Libba Bray. The Diviners is set in 1920s New York and follows Evie O'Neill and a cast of other characters who all have some sort of supernatural ability, and they seem to be being brought together by mysterious twists of fate. Meanwhile, a string of ritualistic murders that have their own supernatural origin are devastating the city, and Evie might be the only one who can stop them. I wanted to read this book in part because I've heard a lot of other people say that it was surprisingly scary, and I love scary stuff. I did not expect it to scare me, really, and I was right, it didn't scare me. The first Naughty John killing it gave me high hopes. It was pretty creepy, it was pretty gory, and I thought, oh, this might not be scary, but this is right up my alley. But unfortunately, the subsequent chapters with his POV didn't quite live up to that. One thing I really liked about this book was the large cast of characters. I was not expecting so many main characters, aside from Evie. I really liked Memphis and Theta in particular, and I would have liked to see them more developed in this story, but I think that that probably happens later on in the series. One thing I didn't like so much about the book was that Evie's ability did not play as big of a role as I expected it to. I thought it was gonna be something that drove the plot, but it ended up being more of an afterthought than anything else. And the final battle fell really flat. I think it was very unrealistic that this supernatural being that was as powerful and as evil as Naughty John wouldn't just crush Evie like a bug the second he had the chance. The pacing of it was really off too. There was a lot of build-up, and then the actual climax happened really fast, and the chapter should have ended right after that climax, but it just kept going into the aftermath, and that was a really strange choice on behalf of the author. I think that it ruined a lot of the tension of that final battle and that climax. I rated The Diviners 4 stars. I think that would be in the lower end of 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, and it was really well written, but I think it could have been better. I'm not sure if I will continue with this series. I would like to. If I had tons of time in the world, I definitely would, but I don't have tons of time in the world, so maybe someday, but there are a lot of books that I want to get to first. And for my character's alignment, I went with Chaotic Evil because I could not help myself. The prompt for Chaotic Evil was to read any book you want, but at the start of each chapter you have to roll a d10, and if you roll a 1, you skip that chapter. And for that challenge, I read Off to Be the Wizard by Meyer. This is about a guy who accidentally discovers that the the entire world as we know it is one big virtual reality computer program, and that he can manipulate reality by hacking its code. Naturally, he gets himself into some trouble, so he sends himself back in time to the Middle Ages to pose as a wizard. But then he discovers that he is not the only wizard there. I chose this book for the chaotic evil prompt because I figured it was going to be a light, fluffy read, and if I did miss some chapters, probably wouldn't be the end of the world. And I was right. This is not The Matrix. It does not delve into philosophical and existential questions of the universe and reality and what it means for humanity if reality is false. It doesn't go into how it was created or why it was created. It just kind of, it all gets brushed away after the protagonist's discovery of it. Unfortunately, not a whole lot happened otherwise either. It mostly centered on Martin's training to be a wizard in the Middle Ages, and I am not a fan of training plots unless there's a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. And there wasn't here. There was a half-hearted mystery that had a way too predictable culprit with a way too bizarre motive, and clearly I didn't really like that either. But who cares about all that? I know what you really want to know is how my rolls went. Did I miss any chapters? Let's find out. Roll number 1 for chapter 1. 4. Hey!
A dice.
It was smooth sailing at first, roll after roll after roll, chapter after chapter after chapter. I did not get a 1. By chapter 15, I was halfway through the book, and I started worrying that I wasn't going to roll a 1 at all, that this crazily evil, diabolical challenge was going to be a complete and utter failure. But then... Chapter 19. Is that... I rolled a 1! I was so excited, I was so strangely excited to finally feel the burn of this challenge, but sadly, wasn't much of a burn at all. After chapter 19, there was not a single moment where I felt confused or lost or didn't understand something because I'd missed the context for it. I missed nothing. Chapter 19 was literally cut out of this book with zero repercussions to the story as a whole. So I kept rolling, and as I rolled on towards the end of the book, without any more 1s to be seen, I started worrying again that this was going to be a total bust, that my bravery for taking on this mad challenge was just going to be all for nothing. And then I got to chapter 28, the penultimate chapter of the book. Chapter 28? Oh, no way. Oh my gosh. I rolled a 1. I missed the entire climax of this book. The one chapter that you don't want to miss in any book, that's the chapter that I rolled a 1 on. The chaotic evil challenge is absolutely chaotic evil at its finest. But I wasn't super invested in the story, so it wasn't the end of the world that I had to miss the end of it. And I did get to read the very final chapter, so I figured out what had happened with the final battle based on that chapter. Overall, Off to Be the Wizard was okay. I rated 3 stars, but the chaotic evil challenge was perfectly, amazingly, hilariously terrible, and it definitely gets 5 stars from me. So that finishes off my first character. It was a chaotic evil halfling warlock, and I earned 150 experience points and leveled up to level 2. Also, we had bonus challenges, one of which was to create a name for your character based on the titles of the books that you read for them. I didn't really have a lot to go on with these 3 books, so I ended up with Snap the Divine Wizard. So my original plan was to read those 3 books as fast as I could and then get my wrap-up done, get it scheduled to post as soon as the readathon was over, because I am due to pop out a baby any day now, and I wanted to get this all finished up before that happened. But then I threw all my Slytherin pragmatism out the window and I grabbed hold of some Gryffindor recklessness, and I decided I would try to read another 3 books in the last 5 days of the readathon. I decided those 3 books should be rereads, partly so that it would go a little bit faster and partly so I could guarantee I was going to enjoy what I'm reading in what could be the last few days I have to read before life goes crazy. For this character's race, I went with Goblin to read a book featuring thieves or a heist, A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, the thief in question, of course, Delilah Bard. And for class, I went with Druid, which is to read a book featuring shapeshifting. I kind of stretched this one a little bit with Cinder by Marissa Meyer. The Lunars don't exactly shift their own shapes, they shift others' perception of how they look. but you know what? I'm gonna count it. I'm not going to waste your time going too far into these books because they are very well known here on BookTube, and I've talked about both of them quite a lot here on my own channel, so no need to get into it again. They're still 5-star reads. They are still some of my favorite books. They are still some of my favorite series, and I was so glad to have read them again. I will say though that reading them so quickly did take something away from the experience. I think I need to let a story percolate in my head. I need to let it absorb into my brain, and I didn't really get the chance to do that reading each of these books in a day and a half. Also, I utilized the audiobooks for both of these so that I could continue reading while I was doing things like washing the dishes and making dinner, so I could use every possible minute I had to get it done. And the narrator for A Dorcas Shade of Magic was pretty good, but his accents were not specifically his accent for Athos Dane. The entire way he presented Athos Dane was so off. Athos is supposed to be this brutal, sadistic character, and the narrator read him like this comical caricature of Sigmund Freud. And it absolutely killed all of the tension in every one of Athos's scenes. Also, his voice for Lila was pretty off. It was kind of high-pitched and girly and just too cutesy and just not Lila at all. And the narrator for Cinder was just pretty flat and dull and monotone. Also, she pronounced Eco as Iko instead of Eco, and that drove me crazy the entire time. Not much else to say about these books. I love them both. I always will. The Shades of Magic series was on my list of things to reread in 2019. Cinder, however, Cinder and the Lunar Chronicles was not, but now that I've read Cinder, I kind of want to just keep going and read the whole series again. After finishing those two books, I had 1 day left in the readathon, and that meant that I could not read some of the other books I had wanted to, like Illuminae or my all-time favorite book, Flowers in the Attic by B.C. Andrews. They were just too long. It wasn't going to happen. But none of the shorter books I have that I would want to reread fit into any of the alignment prompts or into any other category in any combination with the previous two books. I had no choice but to go with Chaotic Neutral. The prompt for that is to read a book that someone else chooses for you. Sebastian, can you help mommy pick a book?
Yeah.
Okay, our choices are The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin, Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh, and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Which book should mommy read? The Ice Dragon?
We asked that.
Read The Ice Dragon? Can you say Ice Dragon?
Ice Daddy.
Good boy. Thank you for your help.
Such a real how.
The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin. I really lucked out. He chose the shortest book of the 3 that I gave him. I was honestly a little scared he was gonna pick Harry Potter because I was not confident that I could finish even that in just a day. So, thank you, Sebastian. The story is about a young girl named Adara who thrives in the cold of winter and who is bonded with the Ice Dragon, who everyone else is afraid of. And when the war that has raged for many years finally takes a turn for the worse, that Ice Dragon might be the only hope for Adara's family when a group of enemy fire dragons comes to threaten them. I had always thought that this story was set in the same world as A Song of Ice and Fire, which you may know better as the Game of Thrones series, but it turns out that it isn't. George R.R. Martin said himself on his blog that they are not set in the same world. So, oops. The story was originally published in 1980, so that is well before A Song of Ice and Fire was even a thing. But there are so many remarkable similarities between Adara and the Ice Dragon of this story and the White Walkers in A Song of Ice and Fire that I think it had to at least have been a little bit of inspiration for George when he finally came to create the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. There really isn't much to this story because it is a children's story and it is very short, but I would rate it 4 stars and I do recommend it to any fans of A Song of Ice and Fire, even if they aren't directly related. So that wraps up my second character for the ReaD&Dathon. I still can't believe I managed to do 2 characters. This one was a chaotic neutral goblin druid, and the name that I came up with for it was Cinder, the Magic Dragon. No relation to Puff. Those 3 books earned me another 150 XP, which means I level up to level 3. We don't know what that means yet. We haven't worked out the details with the next campaign of the readathon, but level 3, not bad. And that wraps up the first campaign of the ReaD&Dathon. I want to thank everyone who participated and who read along with us. There were a lot more of you than I expected, and it was so exciting to see you talking on Twitter about your TBRs and your progress with the readathon and what characters you were creating and what level you were at. I absolutely loved it, so thank you all so much for making our first readathon a success. If you participated, please let me know down below what books you read, what characters you created, what level you ended up with, and if you made any videos for the readathon, please link me to those as well. There will be a second campaign and hopefully a third and maybe a fourth and beyond of the ReaD&Dathon, but we don't have any definite dates yet, and I don't even know if I'll be able to co-host again the next time, so make sure that you subscribe to Kaylee's channel, The Enchanted Library, up there and down below, so that you don't miss anything about the ReaD&Dathon. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading and happy adventuring. Bye-bye.